good to be on the Invincible.
That was lit. This man right here is a bad man.
We can do some damage on some churros down there.
Yeah!
Welcome back to Invincible, the show where we tell the stories of the plays, the players, and the pursuit of becoming invincible on and off the field. My name is Vince Wolfram, and another fantastic week of college football. I think a lot of the expectations we had in a preseason and heading into week one, we're starting to see some color added to those predictions, both good and bad, seeing which ones are saturating, which ones are growing, which picks have proved us right, and also which picks have proved us terribly wrong, and how these teams are faltering the way that they are so far this season. Plenty of great games on deck in week 4. The week 1 through 3 had given us a fantastic lead up into another week full of ranked matchups. I was lucky enough to be down here where I am currently. You can tell I'm not in my typical studio if you're watching this visually. If you're an audio listener, I am down in Coral Gables, Florida, at the University of Miami. I was down here for Miami versus Florida, which is where we will start our breakdowns for week 4. Down here in Miami, College Game Day put on a show. The energy was high. It was supposed to be raining all week, ended up being sunny, blazing hot in typical South Florida fashion, until the game started, and it got awfully soaked on the field. The players were feeling it, but the lead-up was just fantastic. College Game Day with the beautiful Miami campus in the background in its view. The fans were all packed out. A lot of these fans hadn't been to a College Game Day event in many, many years. It was the last time Miami was good, right? It's been a handful of years since we've seen a Miami team at this level. Mario Cristobal coming out. We had Pat McAfee taking a leap of faith, quite literally, taking everything but a Speedo off and jumping off of a high dive from however many feet it was. The entire fan base at College Game Day was lit up. It was a precursor to what would be a very energetic afternoon in college football. And for the game itself, Florida faltering, right? At LSU, a tough loss. At home against USF the week before, a tough loss. So 2 tough ones for Florida Gator fans and Billy Napier, heading into Miami, who arguably has some of the best resume builds so far this season with wins over USF, win over Notre Dame at home. Great wins heading into another one that would prove to be the same. Number 4, Miami at home in this one, and they down here in Coral Gables, Florida. I tell you what, Miami will have the bragging rights in this state for just a little while longer. They routed the Florida Gators 26-7 last night at the Hard Rock Stadium in downtown Miami. In my opinion, Miami is the scariest team in college football right now. Scariest in that their front 7 on defense is scary good. They are junkies. They are tough. They will get after you. It is a Mario Cristobal classic. They're flying around like birds, taking people's head off. Anybody that comes across the line of scrimmage, they're there. That's the kind of defense this is. They are live. The action is there. You can tell there's a hunger piece that has been added to this group, maybe through Carson Beck, maybe through what Miami is building down here in the ACC, but the action is there. The presence is there. Mario Cristobal has his team built to the point where he has been working towards since he got this job. The Hurricanes, they dominated the first half, held Florida to only 32 total yards on a way to a 13-0 lead at the break, up 13 at halftime. The offense with the field was a little weird for the quarterback play, but the running game was the key, certainly. Cristobal said after the game, he said, "We've come miles, but we have miles and miles to go." And I couldn't agree more with that statement, but I also think on the other side of the scariest team in college football, there's this, because we haven't seen this team's full potential. 6 procedural penalties in the first half limited a lot of what Miami was looking to do on offense. Kept them to only 13 points despite having several very, very consistent drives, chances to score, and they faltered. They weren't able to make it happen. At one point, Carson Beck whiffed on 5 straight passes, connected on only 1 pass more than 20 yards in this game, so a little limited. Miami's defense, they obviously had stepped up, like I mentioned, but the passing game kind of faded, I thought, a little bit. Plus, they've got Florida State coming up in a couple of weeks. So Beck, I think, needs to step it up a little bit. And they allowed Florida to fight back. The energy shifted once this second half started. Florida put together an 80-yard touchdown drive, ate up basically the entire third quarter clock. Late charge. Miami had a 7-minute drive to basically bleed down all the clock, and they had a game-sealing score with just 4 minutes remaining. I thought the running backs for Miami were impressive, as they have been for the majority of this year. Fletcher and CharMar Brown combined for 190 yards rushing and 3 scores. Brown added 53 yards receiving through the air. A nice dual threat piece there. I thought Fletcher's impressive just because of his physicality. He's a guy who loves to get downhill. And for the most part, like I believe in the Carson Beck project. I know a lot of people, especially SEC people, who have seen him play at Georgia and saw how the year went last year. I'm a Carson Beck believer. I think he is the veteran of college football. He's decorated too. He plays in national championship games, has won national championships. For Miami to have a guy like him that has the chip on his shoulder, I think that's going to be huge. He was 17 of 30 for 160 yards and an interception, and he's 3-0 all-time against Florida. And in the last 25 years, only fellow Georgia quarterbacks Jake Fromm and Aaron Murray also had 3 wins over the Gators as starters. So Miami, they improved to 78-3 at home as an AP top 5 team. The Gators, they struggled, finished only 139 yards, and quarterback DJ Lagway only averaged 2.8 yards per pass attempt. Gators down 0-13. They went 0-13 on third down. So a lot of numbers working against the Gators this week, and I think none more than the fact that there's no game for the Gators this week. They're heading into an early season bye week, which, in my opinion, Billy Napier's job could very well be at risk. So we will have to wait and see on that news. I'm sure that is a conversation that's looming throughout Gainesville right now, but all I know is that Miami leads Florida right now. And what I mean by leads is they are the head program in the state of Florida. Just talking ACC, SEC. Now let's talk SEC, SEC. We're starting to get into some conference play here, which I think will give us some fantastic matchups as we move forward. Number 22, Auburn at number 11, Oklahoma. There was an element here of homecoming. Jackson Arnold, the starting quarterback for Auburn, transferred from Oklahoma after the 2024 season, and John Mateer, the Oklahoma quarterback that is currently in first place in the Heisman Trophy voting, transferred as the best transfer quarterback in the class and took Arnold's spot as the Sooners' man under center. Now, Arnold had success at Oklahoma, led Oklahoma during last year's upset of Alabama, but he couldn't replicate that magic against the Sooners on Saturday. And the main reason was, for Oklahoma, it was a sack attack. Oklahoma set a school record by sacking Jackson Arnold 10 times last night. Oklahoma pass rusher Mason their main pass rusher, Mason Thomas, he missed the entire first half due to a targeting penalty called last Saturday against Temple in Philadelphia. His second play back in the third quarter of this game, he got a sack, and then later sacked Arnold for a safety in the end zone with a minute remaining to crush all hope that Auburn fans had in this game of scoring that final touchdown and potentially taking the lead. I think with Brent Venables calling the defense, Oklahoma is going to be very, very tough. They held the Tigers to 287 yards. The defensive linemen accounted for 8.5 of Oklahoma's 10 sacks. That front line is dangerous. They are going to really, really battle with a lot of good SEC teams this year, and that doesn't negate how the offensive lines are with the other SEC teams, but just proves that Oklahoma's defensive front is very, very good. Jackson Arnold was under pressure all night. 46% of his dropbacks, he was under pressure. And that's a tough spot to be, especially with all the noise surrounding this game for Arnold. And for the other quarterback, for John Mateer, he entered the day as my best quarterback in college football. He's the real deal. He was the number 1 transfer quarterback in the country for a very, very good reason. And it was then time for the entire Oklahoma team to showcase what else it could do. For me, I knew what I was getting with John Mateer. He's going to develop each and every week into an even greater player than we already believe him to be. But the defense, they obviously stepped up against Auburn, right? We talked about the front line. The biggest problem, still the run game. A very much question mark for Oklahoma going forward, and something that I know I'll be looking for and wondering when will they get this run game going, because the Sooners, they got even less out of their run game than they had in games thus far this season. 32 yards on 26 carries. Mateer, he made the plays when they needed it, but they have to get a run game going for them to do real damage in the SEC, in my opinion. Now, for Auburn, let's look at what the biggest news has been online since this game had ended. And I want to start by saying this. Officiating is never easy. I never wish to be in the spot with the amount of pressure and the amount of things relying on these officials to make good calls. They're put in that position every single game. That is their job. It's part of it, but it is never easy. But when the SEC has to release a statement about a play that gave Oklahoma basically a walk-in touchdown in the early minutes of that second quarter, you know the officials might just have missed one. And outside of some pass interference misses, some questionable calls, the sheer amount of penalties called in this game against Auburn, I think I learned more about this Auburn team by their toughness because they never gave in. And with Auburn so far, they played Baylor. They did their thing on the road. I expected they would be okay on the road, which they were for the most part, especially on defense. But the toughness, they played 2 cupcakes at home going into an Oklahoma team that's proven that they can beat good teams as they did against Michigan a couple weeks ago. But I learned a lot about this Auburn team and their toughness in this one. The defense was impressive on the outside. They forced Mateer to have tough throws, to fit the ball into tough spots, make tough plays, and make decisions that he didn't want to make. They made the running game even more difficult on the inside. Keldrick Falk especially had a sack in this game, plenty of tackles. They're a tough group, and I think Freeze has really beat them into that toughness mentality and has them going, has them ready to compete at a very, very high level. I think they're going to do some damage. Auburn fans, do not panic. You've got a good team. You've got a coach that recognizes that. I would love to see Arnold exercise his arm and be more confident in it. Like, we got to remember, this guy was a top high school player in all of America coming in as a freshman at Oklahoma. This guy can make plays. He can do it. He hasn't thrown an interception yet. We haven't seen him make many mistakes. I would love to see a guy like Jackson Arnold cut loose. He's got receivers galore. Cam Coleman made a big difference yesterday. He's a guy that if they don't start getting him the ball, I could see, unfortunately, that guy going somewhere else where he would be utilized in an offense because the time he's been at Auburn, it just hasn't really come to him. And the ball needs to get to a receiver as good as Cam Coleman. It got to Eric Singleton, I thought, yesterday. I think he had north of 60 yards. But I would love to see Jackson Arnold cut loose a little bit. A tough one here for Auburn fans. The last drive and how it went with penalties, getting pinned in your own end zone, and then the safety at the end basically to call the game. 24-17. Number 11, Oklahoma beats number 22, Auburn. Good teams here, though. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do moving forward in SEC play. It's going to be tough conference play for both of these programs, but I think it'll be a good test, and I think you'll see some upsets on both ends. Let's go now from the SEC to the Big Ten. Illinois, there's been so much hype about Illinois this summer and into this fall, and everyone's saying Illinois could be this year's Indiana. Well, I think it turns out that Indiana is probably this year's Indiana. If I told you that Indiana would have overwhelmed Illinois, you may have not believed me, but that was exactly the case. First win over a top 10 opponent in 5 years for Indiana. And they did it mostly lopsided. 63-10. That's the final score from Bloomington. Indiana put it to Illinois. Fernando Mendoza threw 5 touchdown passes. He was 21 of 23, only missed 2 throws all night, 267 yards, became the first ever Hoosier with multiple games of 5 or more touchdown passes in just 3 quarters. This guy is electric. Curt Cignetti's offense is perfect for Fernando Mendoza, and he was dealing. He completed his final 17 passes as Indiana extended its home record win streak to 12, dating back to the start of the Curt Cignetti era, 4-0. They're 1-0 in the Big Ten now. I think a lot of people with the cupcake schedule they played in the first couple weeks maybe didn't expect this out of the Hoosiers, but that's a team I've been high on since they competed in these close games last year when everybody was shocked by the resurgence of Hoosier football. But I think under Mendoza and the way that he was able to deal this ball to his receivers and just score points, it was nasty. And for the Fighting Illini, the offense just struggled. Quarterback Luke Altmaier under pressure all night. Illinois allowed 5 sacks and only rushed for 3 yards in the first half. It was an insurmountable comeback to make. 35-10, they were down at one point. Indiana sealed the win, 2 touchdown drives in the second half to start. And in my opinion, it's the worst loss of Illinois' coach's tenure, and the worst for the Illini statistically since its 63-0 rout at home against Iowa in 2018. Yeah, I wouldn't believe Iowa would have scored 63 points either. But Illinois, in my opinion, they're just not as tough as maybe people expected them. They couldn't sustain much on offense. They didn't really get it going. And obviously their defense wasn't able to stop Indiana. So going forward, if a defense can't stop Fernando Mendoza in Indiana, who will they be able to stop? I kind of expect a little bit of a slide here for Illinois, certainly out of the top 25 this week, but maybe over the course of the Big Ten season as well. I think teams like USC, UCLA, Michigan State, there's plenty of teams I think I could name that would give this Illinois program some problems. And I know for the people who are saying Indiana, they don't deserve it, this hype, this level of praise after beating an Illinois team who hadn't entirely proved themselves, but a win over Duke. Indiana, right? They just beat Old Dominion at home. They whooped up on Indiana State. Like, we expect Indiana to win those games, especially with what we know Kurt Cignetti to do. But I think if they're a playoff team for the second straight season, they'll have to have earned it. This year they play Oregon and Penn State, both on the road. Huge tests for Indiana. And if IU doesn't win the Big Ten title, it probably needs to at least split with those opponents, I would think, with Oregon and Penn State to win even a debate over another contender as a at-large bid. But next week they hit the road for their first big road test. So I'm excited to see what Indiana can do. I think this year you'll see far more really good 3-loss teams than we have maybe ever in college football, right? Like, now there's 12 spots to take. I think those 3-loss teams, they could still have a chance. So we'll see as the year goes on and as these teams fold, but there's good teams all over the board. Staying in the Big Ten, there's plenty of good talent in the Big Ten, as we've seen. Number 1 and number 2, both on bye weeks this week with Ohio State and Penn State. The Big Ten running college football, they had the eyes in Nebraska yesterday. Number 21, Michigan at Nebraska. The big question, how would Bryce Underwood perform in his first real road test in the Big Ten in a heater of a matchup on the road at Nebraska? And I can tell you this much. He was good enough to hand the ball off to running backs Justice Haynes and Jordan Marshall, and the defense was good enough to sack Dylan Raiola 7 times. That was the difference. We did see more from Underwood. He was 12 for 22 passing, 105 yards, scored the Wolverines' first touchdown on a 37-yard skipper, extended the team's last scoring drive with a key third down pass and a quick scramble. So he showed us more of this talent that we've heard about but hadn't necessarily seen against a tough opponent. He gave it to us. And the running backs, they did their thing. The running back, Justice Hayes, 149 yards, including a big 75-yarder where he went basically untouched late in the first half. And Marshall, he ran for 80 yards, including a 54-yarder that gave Michigan a 10-point lead entering the fourth quarter. That was a big pressure point. Plus Michigan coaching without their head coach, Sharon Moore. He was out with suspension, so acting head coach Bill Poggi was the head man. And he said a quote. He said, "I know it's 17-7, but physically we're beating the snot out of them, and we're turning it into a heavyweight fight, and that's going to be our biggest advantage of the second half." And he told his team, that's what he told his team at halftime. And after the game, he said, "I think it was." And I'm going to have to agree with that. And Nebraska, I think there's room for that fan base to be positive because they played a very, very close game. The Hail Mary at the end of the first half was huge. I thought that was an energy booster going into the half for the Cornhuskers. But in all honesty, I just feel bad for Nebraska fans. They're such a good fan base. They're always live. There's always hope. And this seems to be the case more often than not when they get a close game at home and unfortunately falter. And unfortunately, that's just sometimes how the cookie crumbles. And in this case for Nebraska, it's been more often than not. So my prayers, my thoughts are with you, Nebraska Cornhusker faithful. I think your season isn't over. There's plenty of stories still to be written, right? This is just week 4. Dylan Raiola, I think, has things to figure out under that Matt Rule offensive system. I don't know that he is as quick maybe as he used to be in high school, though some of those sacks he tried to break away wasn't quite able to do it. So I'm interested to see where Nebraska goes from here and how the Big Ten shakes out. Plenty of great games there this week and even more so next week as we dig deeper into conference play. Now that we broke it down, let's go to the poll patrol, your fast pass through the top 25. Number 1, Ohio State. Number 2, Penn State off this week, like I mentioned. Number 3, LSU in Baton Rouge against Southeastern Louisiana. They cruised. LSU offense, finally, we're seeing some pop like we had hoped to see in the weeks up to this point. We've been waiting for it all year. We saw a little bit of it. We haven't seen them turn up on offense. Defense we have. We've been surprised by that. Offense finally did their thing. I think it was 63-0 or 63-10. It was a brutal score for LSU versus Southeastern Louisiana, which you expect. Number 4, Miami took care of Florida, as we saw. Number 6, Oregon rolled Oregon State. They used to call it the Civil War, but this was more like David and Goliath. But if Goliath was won handily, 41-7 win for the Ducks. Quarterback Dante Moore threw for 305 yards and a career-high 4 touchdowns. The coolest part, he threw 4 touchdowns to 4 different receivers. We love involvement, we love community, and we love when you put both together and they result in 6 points. All his touchdowns were caught by different guys. Had 585 total yards in offense, did the Oregon Ducks offense. Absolutely elite. Dan Lanning's got a team over there for an exciting matchup next week that we'll talk about in just a bit. Next game, Nick Saban said on College Game Day down here in Coral Gables, and it got a good laugh out of the crowd. He said that number 7 Florida State was going to kick the money signs out of Kent State. And although Coach Saban is a Kent State alumni, played DB for the Golden Flashes, they stood no chance. He was absolutely right. Tommy, quarterback, rushed for 2 of FSU's 8 rushing touchdowns in the Seminoles' 66-10 win. Yes, I did say 8 rushing touchdowns. That is code for we have no answer from the Golden Eagles. A great one for Florida State, a team that is rolling, and I'm very curious to see how the ACC plays out with them, with Georgia Tech, teams that we'll talk about in just one moment. Number 8, Texas at home with a cupcake win versus Sam Houston State. Arch Manning threw for 309 yards, 3 touchdowns. It's been the sharpest game of his season to date. I think we expect that right with an opponent like Sam Houston State. I'm curious to see, too, how he plays in SEC play. How he played on Saturday should be no surprise. Standing over a defender after a big touchdown was certainly a choice. He said his mother wasn't happy about that one. But regardless, a great win for Texas heading into SEC play. Looking forward to seeing what the Longhorns can do. Number 9, Illinois, Canyon's big team of the week last week, got skunked by 19 and by Indiana. The most points the Hoosiers have scored against a ranked opponent in school history. A big one there. Number 11, Oklahoma. We talked about it. Keeps their undefeated record, beating Auburn and Norman. Number 13, Ole Miss. Swallowed the green wave of Tulane, 45-10. Fast start from the Rebels. Basically eliminated any upset hope that the green wave had in this one. Backup quarterback Trinidad Chambliss was confirmed the starter on Thursday, his second consecutive start. And in those 2 starts, he's been electric, racking up 660 passing yards. He had 307 through the air, plus 112 on the ground on Saturday night. And while Trinidad's minutes and play have been fantastic to this point, it has given Austin Simmons, the original starting quarterback for the Rebels, time to recover from a severe ankle injury. I wonder if the starting position will be up for grabs. Will it just go back to Simmons, or will it stay with Trinidad when Simmons is 100% healthy, which I don't know when that will be, because I think Trinidad looked even more effective than we saw from Simmons in his couple of games, especially the game at Kentucky. I like Trinidad. If I'm Lane, I'm rocking with T-Man. And that was Tulane's first loss of the season. Ole Miss continued to cruise. Next, number 15, Tennessee. They handled Trent Dilfer and his cell phone team, UAB, in Neyland Stadium, 56-24. Aguilar threw for 3 tutties, jumped out to a 21-point lead earlier in the first quarter. 21 more in the second quarter. If you can't count, that's 42 points in 2 quarters. That's a lot of points, I tell you what. And then that lead, obviously, too much to overcome. A great comeback win for the Vols after a tough one last week at home against Georgia. Good on the Vols. Number 16, Utah Utes. I wasn't able to watch this game, but I know we had some people high on it. Number 16, Utah Utes, a team that had been scoring the ball like no other in college football to this point. They got smoked by Texas Tech, a team that often has a fiery offense, as we've seen as the product in the NFL is Patrick Mahomes from Texas Tech. A fiery offense. This year, they've come with a little bit tougher of a defense, and that proved to be true last night. 34-10 win for number 17 Texas Tech, shutting down the 16th ranked Utah Utes. Good win for the Raiders. Number 18, Georgia Tech, further proving its legitimacy, beating up on Temple 45-24. Not a huge win, but a good one for the Rambling Wreck. They jumped out to a quick 3-score lead. Temple could never surmount a comeback. With how Clemson has struggled, with the namesake that Florida State has built, crushing teams to this point, Miami as well being as good as I mentioned that they are. Look for Georgia Tech to be in that ACC championship contender conversation in due time. I think Haynes King is the real deal. I'm rocking with the Rambling Wreck. ACC play, I'm telling you, you people are doubting it's going to be far more interesting than maybe it seems on the surface, especially with all of the SEC hype, maybe the sleeper hype on the Big Ten, despite how good they are every single year. The ACC, I think, could sort of sneak in there and maybe make some noise. All right, next game, number 19, Vanderbilt pulled out its Saturday's best against Georgia State by a lot of points. 70-21. Yes, not a middle school basketball game score when one team plays AAU for 12 months straight and the other is a church league team. This was a football game. Vandy scored its most points in over a century, 107 years. They romped Georgia Tech. Pavia threw for 245, ran for 86, got their lick back on a Georgia State team that actually beat the Commies last season. A great win for Vanderbilt Nashville. You got to start rocking with these Vanderbilt Commodores because they are going to be a real contender in the SEC. The fire is absolutely lit under Diego Pavia and that Commies squad. Number 21, Michigan, win to Memorial Stadium, beat a starving Nebraska team 30-27. We talked about that. Next, another SEC battle, 23, Missouri. They had a great home victory over South Carolina, 29-20. This was a heck of a battle. I thought South Carolina came in, looked really focused, hungry to win and try to get a W in the win column. And you could tell that the loss last week to Vanderbilt, 31-7, was really, really, really left a sour taste in their mouths. They looked to change that mission, but Missouri, they did not flinch. Bo Pribula hammered this one away. Threw for 170 yards with a touchdown pass. And Jamal Roberts had a nifty touchdown of his own with 9:30 left to give Missouri the lead. 14 straight home wins for the Missouri Tigers. If you go there, you might not come out victorious. They are a tough team, an underrated team. Certainly 285 rushing yards for Missouri. Dominated on the ground, especially late when they needed it. Lenoria Sellers did return in this one, which as a college football community we are thankful for. He is a dog. We need to see more magic from him, though. South Carolina didn't get enough of that on Saturday night. 302 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he did miss a handful of open receivers late down the stretch. 12 penalties for 88 yards certainly hurt. The Gamecocks offense got cooked. Missouri's defense spent the entire game in the backfield, 8 tackles for loss and 5 sacks. It is a day full of defenses in the backfield, I think, this Saturday. A lot of offensive linemen must have just been tired, worn out, ready for bye weeks as they start coming up here. As we move down the chain here of the Pole Patrol, your fast pass through the top 25. Number 24, Notre Dame outscored Purdue in Notre Dame Stadium to get its first win of the 2025 campaign. I think it's a no-brainer to say Notre Dame has the best running back tandem in all of college football. Jadarian Price scored 4 touchdowns, a blue band, 100-yard touchdown, kickoff return, and then 3 scores on the ground. Partner that with Jeremiah Love, who finished with 157 yards on 19 carries with 2 scores. A very, very tough running back duo to stop. I don't know that there's a defense out there that can fully stop them. You can just attempt to slow them down. CJ Carr, another solid performance, 10 of 12, 223 yards and 2 touchdowns. Didn't have to do much in this one, luckily for him. The running game said, hey, freshman, we got you. A good one for the Irish fans, happy to get back in the win column this season. Number 25, USC outdid Sparty in what we like to call a crazy Big Ten showdown, a cross-country Big Ten showdown, 45-31. Wayman Jordan with a big game on the ground, 157 yards, average 8.5 yards per carry. A great home win for USC. I still think it's outrageous that this is what we call a Big Ten matchup. They got to travel all the way across the country for that. Days in advance. Travel's not easy. I expect any team that has to travel that far for a game to probably lose. Outside the top 25, plenty more good games on the schedule this week. Memphis, they had some fun on the field moments after a big win over Arkansas. Sutton Smith rushed for a career-high 147 yards. The biggest chunk coming on a 64-yard touchdown run with 4 minutes left to lift Memphis to a 32-31 win. Game was a bit of a neighborhood showdown. If you didn't know, these two teams' fan bases separated only basically by the Mississippi River. Super, super close. Crushing one for Razorback fans as Arkansas led the bulk of this game until that very last Memphis score. Memphis won 32 of its previous 33 non-conference games. Tigers 4-0, and I expect them to be ranked this week. They're a team to watch for, no doubt. Tough one for the Razorback fans. Hard pill to swallow there. Lastly, Clemson stinks. This is one of the biggest preseason hype to week 4 slides that I can remember. They're the 9th team to be ranked in the top 5 of the AP preseason poll to start the season 1-3 or worse per Sports Radar. A very low day for Dabo Swinney. He mentioned that. It's the worst start of his career statistically. Don't fire him, please. It's not worth it. Just because of a bad start, it's no reason to go out and fire a guy that's brought Clemson all the college football glory that it has in its tradition. They're mainly due to the workings of Dabo Swinney. Don't start that narrative, please. Look at it this way. Fran Brown has his Syracuse Orange on a roll, only getting better from here. Another sleeper in the ACC, a program that's on the rise. You just got to watch out for him coming. He had an aggressive calls early, which I thought set the tone for the Syracuse offense. Steven Angeli threw for 244 and 2 scores before he left with a lower leg injury. I heard murmurs of Achilles. It looked like Achilles, but I don't know that there's any official reports out there yet. Prayers up to Steven Angeli. Former Notre Dame quarterback has been holding it down for the Cuse so far. Fran Brown with the quote of the day after this one. I'm so excited to get to Syracuse. Hopefully I can eat for free. Well, Fran, I think when you beat teams like you have to this point and you start winning games, that food gets easier and easier. Not only just to purchase, but to digest as well. Keep digesting wins, and that food gets nicer and nicer. Let's head down to the breakdown part of our show here. Let's look at the culture check. Everybody's favorite parts. Here they are. Which program showed identity, energy, or chemistry from week 3 to week 4? That jumped off the page to me. My culture check for this week, I think it's an easy one. And if you don't know it, Google it. Indiana. This was the first chance to show the committee a complete performance against a Big Ten opponent. They did exactly that. Fernando Mendoza is a dog, leads the Big Ten in touchdown passes. Indiana, team to watch for, I think, especially with those 2 big games on the schedule in Penn State and Oregon on the road. Watch out for those. I'm excited to see it. Let's go to the Swagger Watch. Who is a player from week 4 that stood out to me that I think could have a really, really star-studded rest of the year? TCU's quarterback, Josh Hoover. He's a guy who was noted to me after the North Carolina win to keep an eye on, and I have. Mr. Hoover, I noticed. He threw for 379 yards and 5 total touchdowns in a 35-24 win over TCU's rival SMU. Who owns Texas? Well, at least between these two, it's looking like TCU. He's dominated the ACC in the 2 games that he's played against them, 663 passing yards and 7 touchdowns in just those 2 games. Josh Hoover's on a roll. He's already thrown for 1,000 yards, has 11 touchdowns, and is 8th in the entire country in QBR with 87.4. Horned Frog, dog. Gotta love that for the Swagger Watch. Josh Hoover, we got our eyes. Believe it. The flip-flop. Confess one prediction that you were dead wrong about after week 3 heading into week 4. Honestly, I thought that Sawyer Robertson and the Baylor Bears were going to start their heater of a season from this point. Beating SMU, they fell at Auburn in week 1. They're going to start rolling? Well, no. Arizona State had different plans. I doubted Arizona State after its tough, demoralizing loss at Mississippi State a couple weeks ago, but I shouldn't have. They beat Baylor by a hair on Saturday, 27-24, to move to 3-1 on the year. Let's look at the schedule for week 5. It's very hard to believe that we are already 5 weeks into the college football season with a great week on the rise. Here's the best 9 games on the schedule for week 5. We're going to start at ranked Illinois again. Ranked USC, ranked Illinois. That'll be a battle up there in Michael Jordan State. Notre Dame at Arkansas is a big one for the Irish. It's one of the best games on their schedule remaining. I think this is a must-win for them because I think if they fold another game, their playoff hopes might just be smushed. I talked about the 3-loss teams maybe having a chance, because I think there will be a lot of good ones, especially with how good the conferences are this year, but Notre Dame not being in one. I usually don't think that works against them. I think it, if anything, helps them out, but it doesn't help them out when they lose. So they got to beat Arkansas in this week if they want a shot at making the playoffs come week 12, week 13 of this year. Ohio State at Washington, two teams that have appeared in national championships in the last couple of years. Washington, Seattle, they love their football out there. Let's get into some conference games here. LSU at Ole Miss. This will be a fantastic one. Lane Kiffin versus Brian Kelly. Who will Lane Kiffin start at quarterback? We will see. Will it be Trinidad or will it be Austin Simmons? We don't know. But we're curious to see, will LSU's offense be able to put up the numbers that it did this week, or will it falter like it has against good defenses to this point this season? We don't know, but we're going to watch out this weekend to see. Auburn at Texas A&M. Last year, the game between these two teams was an all-time classic. 4 overtimes at Jordan-Hare Stadium. Auburn fans rushed the field after a drop pass from Marcel Reed. A crazy game, a neck-and-neck game through and through. A&M, obviously, very high confidence after going to Notre Dame and beating that team down the wire. They think they can win any game. We'll see. This will be a very good one. I think Auburn will come in with a chip on his shoulder after the Oklahoma loss this week. To the Big Ten, Indiana at Iowa. This will be Indiana's first big road test. Iowa, stout defense, as we always know. The offense is questionable. I'm curious to see how well Fernando Mendoza will be able to deal through that Iowa defense. We'll just have to wait and see. Another one in the Big Ten this week, where College Game Day will be. Oregon at Penn State. This is one that I think we'll have circled on our calendars in a couple of weeks when we look back at these team schedules to see what they endured in the conference. This is going to be one that we're going to have marked as a big one. Two of the best teams, if not the best two teams in the Big Ten going at it. Oregon traveling across the country to play in a freezing cold, potentially snowed out. When I say snowed out, I mean white out. Penn State. We'll see. That one will be a great one in Pennsylvania. To the SEC for the last two, Tennessee at Mississippi State. Will Tennessee be able to get a roll started? Will Mississippi State prove to be another very, very difficult road atmosphere to win in for the Vols? The question marks loom. I actually like Mississippi State in this one. They've been playing good football to this point. I'm curious to see how loud the cowbells are and if that can throw off Joey Aguilar. We're going to see about it. And the last one is an all-time great matchup between two storied franchises, Alabama at Georgia. Two very, very good teams. We saw what happened to Alabama in week 1. They've been essentially kind of written off ever since. I believe in Ty Simpson. I like what that offense has done over the last couple weeks to improve. Georgia, they showed a lot of cards against Tennessee last week. Gunnar Stockton made a name for himself, showed that he can deal. This one is going to go down to the wire. I think could be an overtime level game. Kirby Smart, Kalen DeBoer. The Dogs will be who I have my eye on in this one. A lot riding on this game, I think, for them. A big confidence booster if they win it, and certainly a step back if not. Alabama, they need this one. They need to win this game if they want playoff hopes with the schedule remaining that they still have to go through. Well, that wraps up another fantastic week of college football. Week 4 in the books, week 5 to look forward to. Plenty of great matchups, traditional games, a lot of things to be excited for, and a lot more reason to sit on your couch, turn on that multi-view, and not get up on your Saturday afternoon. We'll make sure to tap in all week. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel or this Spotify page. Make sure to see all of our clips on YouTube Shorts, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. We will be tapped in all this week. Exciting college football coming up as we enter conference play, and even more exciting content on the way. Thank you so much for joining this episode of Invincible. My name is Vince Wolfram, and we'll see you college football sickos next week.